All right, let's talk about why is it so hard in the modern world for the average person to get ahead? Why does government money printing and controlling of the money supply massively, or what I consider it the number one cause for wealth inequality in the world? And how does Bitcoin fix that? All right, so the reason it's so hard to get ahead, of course, there's a bunch of reasons, but one of the primary ones is that everyone in the world that uses government money, which is everyone who's not living on a Bitcoin standard, using or and saving their wealth in Bitcoin, is standing on a conveyor belt that is going backward. So you are trying to get ahead. While you are trying to get ahead, the government is printing more money that is decreasing the value of your labor, decreasing the value of your work, decreasing the value of your bank account, and decreasing the value of anything that is priced in US dollars, like wages and bank accounts and that sort of things, checking accounts, savings accounts. The value of all of those things is going down as the government prints more money and dumps it slowly, sometimes quickly, but always slowly, into the economy. As a result of that, you're always moving backwards at least 4% to 9% per year. Now, it used to be 2%. The government used to say, Scouts honor, we promise, 2%. That's as far as, we're only going to take away your purchasing power by 2% per year. Now they've given up on that and said, hey, 3% is not so bad. But when you really accurately calculate it all, it's more like 4% to 9%. And then at times of sort of runaway inflation, it gets into the double digits. It's in the United States. Other countries are almost categorically worse, and some are far worse. In a handful of countries around the world, your purchasing power of your money drops in half every single year, which basically means you are on you're on a reverse, a walking sideway going backwards at running speed. So if you're in a country with hyperinflation, you are on a moving sidewalk. It is in reverse. It is in high speed reverse mode, and you are trying to run forward. So regardless of whether you're in the United States and you're trying to move forward and the government's trying to move you backward between 4% and 9% per year, and you're having to overcome that. So you have to keep running faster just to stay in the same spot. So if inflation is, let's pick a number. If inflation is 7%, that means 1/7 of whatever you've saved up disappears every year, which means you're having to move. You basically 1/7 of your forward motion is eaten up by the government, and then on top of that, you got to work really hard to get ahead of that. So if you have, let's say, I'm going to use round numbers here. If you have $100,000 in the bank and you're trying to save up $7,000 per year, you should be getting ahead. If the government's got you on a moving sidewalk going towards a 7% a year, then every year, new $7,000 you save, all it really does is make up for the reverse moving sidewalk you're standing on, resulting in you not moving forward. You're just not moving backwards. So, how does this increase income inequality? Well, in the world is largely divided into two groups: people with assets and people without assets. Assets are things like real estate, stocks, bonds, you know, any sort of financial instruments, investments, anything like that is an asset. Most of the world does not have assets. Most of the world lives on a paycheck. Their savings are in a bank account or stuffed under their mattress or something like that. And they don't have stocks or bonds or a 401k or an IRA. And most of the world just doesn't have those things. Or if they do, they don't have them in a significant way. It's not a large part of, maybe they have savings, but all of their savings are, 10% of their annual income. And that's it, So if you divide the world into people with assets and people without assets, when the government prints money, what it does is it decreases the value of anybody who already owns money. And a portion of that newly printed money goes into the assets that people already own. Which means if the government doubles the money supply, let's just say all of a sudden the government doubles the amount of money in circulation, which is, largely what the government's done. Yeah, it's like quadrupled it since, the 2008 recession, but let's call it double since, I don't know, 2018. I don't know what the numbers are, something like that. Um, Most of that doubling of the money ultimately ends up, not all, because it hurts everybody. When the government prints money, it hurts everybody. It hurts rich people, it hurts poor people, it hurts everybody. But it hurts poor people, it hurts the people without assets much more than it hurts the people with assets. So let's call it somewhere between 50 to 80% of the new money ends up chasing, real estate, stocks, bonds, investments, all those things, and it drives the prices of those things up, which means those things are now harder to get for the people that are trying to. So the people without assets are watching the ability to buy assets at all disappear into the future as houses and the stock market and all of these things become more and more expensive. And they watch the value of their labor and their wages go down. So they might have got a 2% raise, but in a 2%, if you get a 2% raise when inflation is 5%, when the government prints 5% more money, then you're moving backwards 3%. So when new money comes into the economy, which is what the government does when it prints money out of thin air, some of that money chases assets, which drives up those asset prices, benefiting the people who already have those assets. But all of that money takes away purchasing power from the people who don't have assets. So the number one cause of wealth inequality in the world is the fact that government controls the money supply. Government prints money. The people who have assets see the value of those assets go up. The people without assets see the value of their wages go down because the people without assets are living entirely on wages, which go down in purchasing power when the government prints money. And the people who have assets see the value of their assets go up comparatively. Now, again, they don't go up as much as the money printing. So when the government doubles the money supply, maybe asset prices go up 50% or 80%. You're still worse off because they didn't go up 100%, but you're a heck of a lot better off than anyone who did not have assets to start with. So government control of the money supply and government printing money out of thin air is the number one driver of wealth inequality in the world. There are other drivers. Obviously, some of it is caused by differences in education, or I should say, access to quality education. Some of it is caused by, different upbringings. Some of it is caused by different access to healthcare. But the number one driver is caused by the fact that the government is printing money and putting people who depend on the US dollar and depend on wages and salaries, basically working people, it puts them on a reverse walking sidewalk. They're always trying to get ahead, but always being pulled backward. Meanwhile, the people who have assets, that newly printed money is artificially inflating to some degree the value of those assets, which are pushing the people with assets while pushing the people without assets down. Obviously, wealth inequality is largely a function of if you got assets, you have attached yourself to a helium balloon slowly tugging you up. If you don't have assets, the government has basically attached you, a millstone around your neck, and that is always pulling you down. It doesn't mean you can't swim against it. It just means every little bit you try to swim is being offset by the fact that you're being pulled down by the fact that the government's constantly putting you on a reverse treadmill. So, how does Bitcoin fix this? Well, Bitcoin is the first monetary system in the world, the first money in the world, and the first monetary system in the world that has a fixed supply. It is not controlled by a government. It's not controlled by a company. It's not controlled by anyone or anything. It's controlled by the Bitcoin network, which is controlled by everybody who uses Bitcoin, and everybody who uses Bitcoin has a veto over changing the total amount of Bitcoin that will ever exist, which is 21 million. So when you get paid and you immediately turn those US dollars into Bitcoin, you have insulated yourself against the government money printing. You have guaranteed that you are not on a sidewalk, a moving sidewalk going backwards. It's not as a result of the money, or I should say the government money printing. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin is not volatile. You're going backwards and forwards, at various points because we're so early in the Bitcoin adoption cycle. But in general, the Bitcoin moving sidewalk is going forward. The directional flow of the Bitcoin moving sidewalk is forward. It goes back and forth some on its way forward. What I like to say is it goes up and down on its way up. Now, I said the word up twice and the word down once. Bitcoin goes up and down on its way up. So that's two ups, one down, two steps forward, one step back, two steps forward. So it's volatile. It goes up and down, but directionally, it is always eventually going forward. The US dollar never goes up in purchasing power. Inflation has never, in the modern era, ever been negative, meaning you never woke up and you could buy more with your money tomorrow than you could buy with your buy today. Directionally, the US dollar is always going backwards. It is always losing purchasing power. You are always in reverse. So, the biggest thing we could do to solve income inequality is move the world from a fiat currency. Fiat means made up, it means created out of thin air by fiat. Fiat means by command, by dictate. Basically, the government just makes up money. As the world moves, which has already started, we're still very early in that process, but as the world moves from fiat currency, government made money, such as the US dollar and the euro and the yen and the yuan and the, et cetera, as the government moves from that money to money that nobody can make out of thin air, which is Bitcoin, the difference, the disparity between those who have assets and those who don't will shrink. So income inequality will start to reverse as everybody gets to use money that is not working against them. So Bitcoin is a money that is working for you. It is volatile. It goes up and down on its way up, but it is the directionality is it is working for you in the long term. The US dollar is only ever working against you, and you're constantly having to fight against its loss of purchasing power every single day. So, how do I summarize this? Why is it so hard to get ahead? Because governments have put you on a moving sidewalk going backwards. That is why it's so hard to get ahead. It's the only reason it's hard to get ahead. The primary reason it's hard to get ahead is that the government has put you on a moving sidewalk, moving backwards is a tough position to be in. And that is where we all find ourselves. So that is the number one reason. Um, it has caused. Hold on, give me 1 second here. So I'm watching Tesla navigate a very complex intersection there. It did it admirably. I appreciated its actions there. Anyway, so so that's why it's so hard to get ahead is governments have put us all on a backwards moving sidewalk. Um, Government money printing increases wealth inequality by watering down the money of the people who don't have assets and watering up the people who do have assets. Even though everybody loses, the people who have assets lose less than the people who don't. Therefore, everybody's worse off by government money printing because everybody's having their purchasing power watered down. Some of that watering down sort of waters into assets. The watering down effect of the people who do not have assets go down and it never goes up. It's just always down. And then what do we do to fix that? We move to Bitcoin. We save our savings in Bitcoin. We save and in a currency that the government cannot make more of, that nobody can print more of. There's only 21 million. When you own Bitcoin, you know that nobody is making your savings less valuable. And if you hold on to it long enough, directionally, as Bitcoin goes up and down on its way up, it will be up. And it'll be up in a manner that far outruns the government money printing that is trying to hold you back and hold you down and water down your life savings and water down your work and water down your efforts. Bitcoin is the antidote to inflation. And Bitcoin fixes all of that. So, a great time to buy Bitcoin, and my advice has never changed. Buy as much Bitcoin as you can, hold on to it for as long as conceivably possible, and live a life that is much easier without the government taking away your purchasing power. Have a great day, everyone.